Hi, welcome to this episode of Herald Cafe. Today we've got a filmmaker, a homegrown filmmaker, Sonia Filinto with us, a Goekar. And thank you for the time that you have come here, despite your sore throat, and giving us some time.
Thank you, Nilanku. Thanks for having me, and my pleasure to be here.
A film that we want to talk about, Bread and Belonging. First, I would like to ask, why did you choose this subject of POW? Uh, it is so very closer to us, yet we do not know we know the history about it, but the intricacies surrounding the POW, and you made a movie about it. What was your focal point, about making the movie on POW? Is it like, my questions will be, is it like issues of migration you are trying to show, or it's came from the Portuguese? Are you showing some line from there, your point of view, please, about that?
Okay, as you said, everyone knows about bread, and there is pav, and there's so much of, stories around it now. Especially, there's a great nostalgia about,
Yes.
pav. Everyone wants pav, and there's so much being written and talked about and filmed. But for me, it started from from a point of view of somebody who's grown up eating bread, pav, in Goa, and I live out of the state mostly now. So
Okay.
whenever I came back, I was visiting my family, I would see that the bakers are not the same. The bakers are changing. The nature of the ones who are baking the bread are changing. So that was actually my starting point. That was what interested me. I was very interested in who are the ones who are making this, the pav, because pav it is such a integral part of Goa's identity, its culture, its cuisine, and it's almost like a global story in that sense that everywhere you go, foods that are being made by where traditional foods of a place are increasingly being made by somebody who's not necessarily from that place, somebody who's migrated probably in that place, say, and that's really like a global phenomena. And for
True.
me, I got interested in telling the story of the bakers, and I'm always looking for stories to tell, and trying to look for a point of view which is might not necessarily be something that is obvious. I try to find point of views, and try to also explore, and through my films, meet people that one might not necessarily meet in the daily course of life. To meet
Right.
them, delve into their lives, and understand where they come from. I mean, not necessarily. Literally, but also figuratively, in that sense, where they come from. So that was what my starting point was. And then, of course, as I went along, and as me and my team went along making the film, there were so many other layers that just revealed themselves. But since you asked about the starting point and what got me interested,
Yes. Yeah.
that was really what got me interested in making a film.
Yeah, because the when you talk about POW, it's been intrinsic in our society, Goan society, but it is also brought by Portuguese. That kind of in that kind of a scenario. Can I also ask that, is it a tool of colonizers for the Portuguese, to change the food habits? Earlier we used to have maybe millets or like rice, Sitkuri
Yeah,
rice,
yeah.
and like,
See,
yeah.
food is basically where we are from.
Yes.
We eat what is around us,
Yes.
and it's our history, it's our geography
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
sense. So in that sense, and if you look at many foods that we eat in India nowadays, from tomato to potato
Yeah.
to cashew,
Yeah.
this is food that has been brought from the outside by the
Okay.
colonizers.
Yeah.
So there is so much of uh, uh, cross pollination of food all over the world in that
True,
sense.
true. Maybe it's a
So yeah,
progression of time, or like societal progression,
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Nice. And what did you find when you were researching about the baker, especially from the childhood you spend time in Kalangut to now? What are the changes? What are the dramatic changes that you see?
See, it's that a void is created and a void is filled You know, so that
Okay.
is what that's really stood out, because everyone wants their bread. Everyone wants to have their bread, morning bread, evening bread, night bread, tea
Yeah.
time bread. You know,
Yes.
everyone
Yeah.
wants their bread. But the ones who traditionally who made the bread, the multi-generational,
Mm.
traditional bakers,
Mm.
are no longer involved in the trade. Either they've left the trade, or they've leased out their trade, or they've expanded to do other things, you know,
Mm.
and for many reasons. Everyone wants a better life,
Mm-hmm.
more, and it's very hard, you know, to make ends meet economically in that sense. So
Mm.
so there is that progression, if you might call it. So
Mm.
and they're leaving the trade, but and that's why this void is created. And I think that's the whole nature of humankind, whole nature of migration, if you look at it that way, you know, where everyone wants to make an honest living,
Mm-hmm.
and you go to where you can make a living. So as one baker from across the border
Mm-hmm.
told me, you know,
Mm.
Goa is to us what Dubai is to Goans, in that
Oh,
sense, you
okay.
know. So
Yeah.
so yeah, so that was one thing that really, as I went along
Yeah,
making the film.
maybe I can trace it to your earlier film, Shifting Sands, where you were talking about the issues of ramponkars, issues of the fishermen next to your village and all. It is also similar. The people from outside are coming, getting into the trade. It's
And
like,
well, it's similar. Like I was exploring the whole concept of everyone wants fish. Everyone wants to eat fish in Goa, you know.
yeah.
Like recently, somebody told me I love to come to Goa in the wind. Sorry, in the monsoon. It's
Mm.
beautiful. It's green. There's no tourists.
Mm.
But damn, yeah, you don't get fish at that time, you know, or
Mm,
there's
mm,
less fish
mm,
at that
mm,
time.
mm,
So
mm.
everyone wants to come to eat fish in that sense, you know.
Mm.
But um, the trade, like, you know, if you look at the sea, the beach,
Mm.
whom does it belong to in that sense, you know?
Commons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
earlier it was the rampon cars with their big boats
Mm.
and, you know, oars, and, you know, and now of course you have the different kind. I mean, the whole thing of just looking at the beach from that point of view, you know,
Okay.
you have the
Yeah.
shacks, and you
Mm.
know, the tourism economy which
Mm.
Goa runs on in that
Mm.
sense, you know.
Mm.
So everyone wants to fish, but is fishing lucrative? You know, so I was just trying to talk to the people from the traditional fishing community and see where do they stand at crossroads in that sense. You know, would they want to continue that or you know, or do something else? Because but when you talk about, you know, that people from outside who are working there,
Mm.
they are the labor in that
Yeah.
sense, you know,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
again, like baking,
Mm.
fishing is very labor intensive. It's a lot of hard work in that
Mm.
sense, you know.
Mm.
So you have so you have these young boys from Moria who come, and, you know, who are the
Yeah.
ones who are actually doing the work, I mean, in terms of pulling the net and all of that. So so yeah, that was slightly different. I was just looking at, you know, the rampon cars, and, you know, what do they think of themselves, of their trade, of who they are, you know,
Okay,
that
okay.
kind of a thing. Yeah.
So then again, talking about lucrativeness of the whole thing. So bakers are also facing the same problem you can see now, because the price of bread is less compared to the amount of effort they put in, amount of labor they put in, the amount of like wood, a special kind of wood they need to put in the to bake. You know, all these things also matters a lot. Like
Well, yeah. So I look at it, and I hope that, you know, the audience of the film also are able to look at it from the point of view that there were two kinds of challenges to the baking trade. One is the
Okay.
tangible challenges,
Yes.
where, you know, the price of bread, it is capped, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Mm.
5 rupees. The kind of effort that
Mm.
goes in
Mm.
really, you know, doesn't justify that amount.
True.
So there are things like, you know, GST, how
Yeah.
GST has affected them, because the unbranded flour does not have GST, but the branded flour has GST. So everyone goes for the cheaper one,
Got
which
it.
is unbranded. So, but there is no quality control in that.
Got it.
Things like firewood, you know,
Mm.
they've been asking for first dibs on, you know, the auction of the forest department wood.
Mm.
Right now, the most of the firewood that they use comes from across the border, and, you know, so a lot of challenges, the labor challenges, of
Yes.
course. So these are the challenges, but the intangible challenge, as I call it, is how do we look at, you know, bakers or anyone who makes or creates with their hand. You know, this whole art, in a way, the film is also a tribute to people who are working with their hands.
Okay.
In the sense that you know, you have artisanal bread now. You can go to a shop and you pay you know, $100 and you get this nice loaf of bread, and you know, all of that. So, but at the same time, so that's and this is actually, somebody had asked me once, you know, an audience member actually, you know, why do I not, you know, when I go to a hotel, or you know, why do I not see this bread anywhere, you
True.
know, in that
Yeah.
sense. So, so I mean, of course, it's not a simplistic answer. I mean, there are many elements that go into it, but for me, it's also as making the film, I realized that, you know, the whole thing of how we really look at the food that is created, how we look at the bakers, how we look at, you know, what they make.
Like a 360-degree perspective around poi, that kind of a.
Well, no, not really. I mean, there
Okay.
are so many more perspectives, and I hope
Okay.
somebody else, you know, explores those perspectives and yeah.
Talking about that audience's questions now, you have screened this film in multiple venues and across community, across audience demographics and all. What are the common questions that you find people are asking after watching the movie, and what are your takeaways from those questions? Are you taking them as a knowledge bank to work on a new film, or you know, taking it as a research base? What are the common questions that you face, and what are you learning from it?
So one of the things that the audience across you know, different kinds of audiences is that in a way, a revelation of all the kind of work that goes into making.
Totally. Before
Yeah.
watching the movie, I didn't know that backstory is like that.
Yeah.
How you put it.
And you know, and also for me too, you know, when I was making the film, the whole concept of time, that time is the essence in making in the bread. You know, you got to knead the dough and keep it for a certain amount of time, and you got to put the bread into the oven for just that amount of time, a little early, a little late, and you know, it's gone. You need to deliver the bread to your customer at that point, that exactly at 8, because if you go at 8:05, you know, they're like, you're late, my child has to go to have breakfast and go to school, and you know, all of that. So time is really of essence, and that was like quite a eye-opener in that sense for me too, you know, in
Right,
making the
yeah.
film. And I'm like I said earlier, you know, the whole idea, one of the things that, you know, as a filmmaker, I hope to I hope that my films are able to start that conversation into, you know, into a certain any kind of subject or any kind of topic where the audience takes back, choose something, you know, they might swallow it or spit it out, but you know, just chew on what's on screen in that sense. And so that's of course one of the things. They're very curious and very enlightened by the food, by how the whole process. And also about the whole thing of community. I think you know, I've got comments on the whole thing of, you know, the community coming together for you know, to making the bread business sustainable, and you know, so lots of things. But and also the whole thing of, you know, who does the bread belong to in that
True.
sense, you know,
Yeah.
because like I said earlier, bread also, bread or food for that matter, is something that brings us together as a community, but it also in a way can be used as a tool to divide in that sense, you know, to
Give me an
claim.
example, please. To divide, like how will you say that?
Oh, I mean, there are many examples.
Just
You
give me
know,
one.
you can't rent out places in cities. In some cities, if you're non-vegetarian, you know, they don't
Oh,
want.
that way,
You
yeah.
know, in that sense, you know, or this whole thing that this is our food. You know, it's not your food. It's our food. You know, so that kind of a thing. So then when then you come up to this whole thing that who does, you know, traditional foods belong to, like I often quote these two examples. So a friend of mine from Kozhikode says, you know, in the very, very traditional Kevlite restaurants out there, you know, the chefs in the kitchen are not from Kevlar, you know, or
It's
somebody
a political statement almost. Yeah.
or somebody at from the horse's mouth, okay.
Yes, yes.
And she also happens to be a filmmaker. So
Mm.
and also another friend who went to Rome, and he mentioned, you know, the pizza makers, the street pizza vendors, you know, outside the stations and all, they are a lot of them are
From
Bangladesh,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know. So that's it. So who does the food of a particular place belong to, in that sense? So
Yeah.
conversation is
Nice. So now that you have screened it across different communities, you are getting this idea, you are getting these informations. There's a two-way communication happening. And what are your future plans? You want to carry on working with these issues, which are very closer to the societal heart, you know, like on migration issues, on and labor, not labor issues exactly. Maybe migration issues. You have any future plans to make movies and documentaries on those issues? Because I'm asking you because I can see a pattern from that shifting sense coming to the bread, and what will be the next topic that you want to pick up?
So the pattern is, I think, pretty much not very consciously done,
Okay.
but I'm very interested in telling stories from Goa. That's for sure,
Mhm.
and that have a kind of you know, in a way, almost like a global perspective, because these are stories that are from the land, but you can actually apply them to
Everywhere.
humans, you know,
True.
to the whole story of humanity, if I may say,
Yeah.
if I may say so,
Yes, yes.
in that sense. So, with regards to migration and things like that, I hope there are other films that are being made, and I'd love to see some other perspectives and, you know, that kind of thing. So, so I just look at stories and something sometimes just clicks. Like this one, I was just talking to someone, and you know, it just came up in a conversation in that
Okay.
sense, in multiple
Okay.
conversations. So there was no such thing, okay, this is, you know, what I want to do next, and something that just interests. And of course, you know, the whole pandemic thing, and I know the world has moved on and everyone has just moved on, and but for me it's also I'm just also it's taken me longer in that sense, you know, to process everything that happened in the last couple of years. So yeah, so I don't have anything concrete to tell you
Okay,
as to
right.
what's next,
Right.
but yeah, hopefully something soon.
And a little bit about your journey from uh, being from a Kalangut to get into Bombay, and how did you started your career, and what were you doing before making these films? A little bit about your life story.
Okay, it's very simple. So
Okay.
born, raised,
Mhm.
studied in Goa,
Mhm.
and after Goa, after I did my graduation, I went to do my post graduation in Pune, and then I moved to Bombay, big bad Bombay.
Right.
I started working there, and
Documentaries.
in documentaries. I
Okay.
started working in multiple roles. I started as assisting, and then, you know, working multiple roles in documentaries. Then I did some film. I wanted to try out different things, film, television, and I think full circle back to documentaries. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what my journey has been, and I keep coming back now.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very, like I said, I'm very interested in telling stories from Goa, from you know, the place that I come from. So I'm, you know, one foot in and one foot out in that sense. Yeah.
And there are so many new filmmakers from Goa has come out, like Ronak Kama, Jews, and all these new films. So any message to the aspiring Goan filmmakers from your experience, like you have done?
I would say read books.
Read books?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, see, there's a lot of information about, you know, films, and I keep getting asked this question, you know, film school or, you know, experience. So, you know, the verdict is out there, and, you know, you can learn and you can do a lot of things. And the two filmmakers that you mentioned, I love their work, by the way, and, you know, they're really doing some good stuff. But for me, I would say, if I have one thing to say, I would say read books, read all kinds of books.
Okay.
Don't stop the reading habit,
Okay.
because there is so much that you can, you know, feed your filmmaking, or your point of view, you know, can be fed so much by from books, really. So I would say read books. If you want to
Yeah.
be a filmmaker, read
Read
books.
books. Nice.
Yeah.
That's a great advice. Yes. Uh, any any hurdles you faced in making this film Bread and Belongings you want to talk about?
The hurdle is always money. You know,
Right.
it's always how do you make a film? You need the money in that
Mm.
sense, you know. But I have been very fortunate, and really, I cannot be more grateful to the kind of support I went the crowdfunding way.
Yeah, it
and
is a
the-
crowdfunded
and the
movie.
support was absolutely overwhelming.
Mm.
I got more money from people I didn't know than from people I knew. You know, people who I didn't know who they were, from all parts of the world, put in money. So,
Nice.
so I was, you know, that's just faith in humanity. As
Yeah,
they
it
say.
also
It's
connects
like
back to
really,
the community that we were talking
Yes.
about, food as a
Yeah.
community bond.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
So,
Thank you for your time, Sonia, and it's great to have you here and hear about your movie, Bread and Belonging. And I ask the audience to check her website. If you haven't seen the movie, it's breadandbelonging.com. And if you want to write to her, there will be a contact address, contact email there. And I totally suggest that you should see this movie because it's very sensitively made about though it's about Pau, you get to see a lot of intricacies in and around making of the Pau, and how the migration issues, how the like people from outside are coming as a podder now to give the breads, and how the traditional bakers are changing, that way. Thank you for it.
So yeah,
yes.
as you said, who is an outsider and who's
Yeah.
an insider at the end of
Yes,
the day,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So thank you
Yeah.
for having me,
Yeah.
and
All the best to you.
thank you so much.
Thank you, audience. We'll see you next week.